Defense News. It's proudly sponsored by Navy Federal Credit Union. If you're a member of our nation's armed forces, the Department of Defense, or if your family is, we'd be proud to serve you too.
On this episode of Defense News Weekly, we've got a ton of stories coming your way from across the military and defense spaces. At the highest levels of the military architecture, a new leader of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is sworn in. Plus, in the Pacific, relics from another age. Carriers sunk in the Battle of Midway have been found. See what they look like today. And youth in the Detroit area get a chance to follow the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen and learn how to fly. Also, steroids test for Navy SEALs? The military says PED screenings are coming. And we learn about the future of defense manufacturing from a leader in the industry. It's those stories and more in the latest in news and analysis from the Pentagon to the platoon here on Defense News Weekly. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. I'm Diana Stancy. We start off this week with some historic footage, some of the first detailed images of a trio of aircraft carriers sunk during the Battle of Midway. Footage from 3 miles underneath the Pacific Ocean brought vivid images of the ships, each a casualty of one of the war's most pivotal naval battles.
The Battle of Midway set the pattern for other sea battles which followed in the Pacific.
Researchers said access to the ship is so difficult because of how far and how deep the ships are out in the ocean.
One of the things that is important to understand is the challenge of working in a place like this. So we are right in the middle of the Pacific. So we're basically, if you look at a map, almost dead center between the coast of Japan and the United States. Our closest point of land, or closest point of land where there's actually cities or towns, is close to 1,500 miles away, and we're diving over 3 miles deep.
Chronicled in the latest mission to document the wrecks were 2 Japanese carriers, the Kaga and the Akagi, and an American vessel, the USS Yorktown. All 3 vessels had been previously located, but not captured in detail.
3 aircraft carriers, 2 of them close together, and so the 2 Japanese aircraft carriers are about 10 miles apart from one another. And in fact, so there were 4 aircraft carriers, Japanese, that were all close together, and they basically that's how they operated in this tight formation. The USS Yorktown is about 100 miles away from that site. The Akagi, from the Japanese Navy, this represents the very first time anyone has ever laid eyes on this wreck since it was lost 81 years ago.
The video is hoped to clarify conflicting reports about how the battle resulted in each ship's demise.
When you look at the action reports and what we know about the battle, those obviously came in times of distress, in times of chaos, in terms of the battle. And so those historic records are not always as clear as you want them. But we had this kind of benefit of spending 2 full days on the seafloor documenting each one of these 3 wrecks in great detail.
One of the first to see the images, 101-year-old veteran Julian Hodges, who served on the Yorktown and had to swim with a dislocated shoulder for 6 hours before being rescued after the fight.
But boy, she took a beating, and I brought tears to my eyes. I'll be truthful about it. I just hate to see my ship torn up like that.
The Battle of Midway took place 6 months after the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. And back at home, the Joint Chiefs of Staff finally got their new chairman recently with the swearing in of Air Force General C.Q. Brown. Brown took over the role from Army General Mark Milley, who oversaw the Military Advisory Board during the Trump administration. The 60-year-old Brown, a career fighter pilot, was the Air Force's first Black commander of the Pacific Air Forces, and most recently, its first Black Chief of Staff, making him the first African American to lead any of the military branches. His confirmation marks the first time the Pentagon's top 2 posts are held by African Americans, with Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin as the top civilian leader. Speaking at a ceremony shortly after the swearing-in, President Joe Biden praised Brown.
I said when I nominated General Brown as a seasoned warrior with deep combat experience, an experienced commander of the Joint Force, top flight strategist, a leader known throughout the force for his unmatched judgment and unflappable demeanor. Like General Milley, General Brown is a patriot through and through, sworn to uphold and defend the Constitution.
The president also condemned the delay on Brown's confirmation, citing Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville's blockade of military advancements due to the DoD's abortion policies.
I'm glad that General Brown was confirmed by the Senate, along with the new Commandant of the Marine Corps and Army Chief of Staff. But I must be careful here how I say this, but it's thoroughly, totally unacceptable that more than 300 other highly qualified military officers are still in limbo. I've been here a long time. I've never seen anything like this. It's outrageous, and it must stop. Their promotions, their careers, their families, their futures, held hostage by the political agenda of one senator and the silence of another 47 of them.
Brown said the military's priorities should be to get more lethal as a military and work closely with international partners.
As we step out together in today's uncertain security landscape, honing our warfighting skills has primacy in all we do. We must focus on integrating our military power within our services, across the joint force, and with our allies and partners to deter aggression, to fight when called upon, and to decisively prevail in war. We must focus on modernizing and aggressively leading with new concepts and approaches. Finally, trust is the foundation of our profession. As chairman, every day I will focus on strengthening the bonds of trust across our force.
A program in the Detroit area is drawing on the rich history of the Tuskegee Airmen to teach a new generation how to fly. Based out of a small airport that houses the Tuskegee Airmen National Museum, the course is aimed at improving representation by people of color in the aviation industry. The Tuskegee Airmen were part of an experimental program for Black soldiers seeking to train as pilots during World War II after the Army Air Corps was forced to admit Black Americans. More than 900 men trained in Tuskegee, Alabama from 1940 to 1946. Working with small planes, local youth learn to fly. The program is open to those ages 14 to 19 and currently has about 30 participants. Cayenne Bovey is one of those students.
Pilot is a very cool experience. It takes a lot of hard work, studying, dedication. It was something I really fell in love with. I thought it was so cool. I was actually behind a small airplane at the controls. Since then, I've learned a lot, and I really understand how great of pilots they were and how skilled they were.
Next up, a group of Air Force pararescuemen set a new world record recently when they performed the highest ever group high altitude, low opening jump. Leaping out of a balloon 38,000 feet over the New Mexico desert, they linked up in a 5-person formation before landing safely. The jump was organized by a group called Alpha 5, with a mission to call attention to the work done by the Special Operations Warrior Foundation.
I feel great. I mean, I had little trouble breathing at about 33,000 feet. I think the valve might have been getting a little bit frozen, but we got that fixed. And then the ride down, the formation is pretty much as we thought it was going to be coming out of the balloon, and we got hooked up, and that's what matters. But what's more important is the purpose we're doing this, which is the Special Operations Warrior Foundation. These 4 brave guys I had the opportunity to go with are all Air Force pararescue who have spent their careers putting their lives in harm's way to save others.
I mean, being up there, being at 36, almost 37,000 feet, and I mean, you can almost see the curvature of the earth. Beautiful. Most beautiful jump I've ever done.
A representative from Guinness World Records was on site for the jump to confirm the new benchmark set by the Alpha Team 5 group. Nice work, guys. And stick around. When we come back, the latest news in the defense industry. And steroids testing for SEALs, we look into a new policy.
The military and defense market is constantly evolving. Stay on top of the latest news with Sightline Media Group's live events. Continue to learn, understand new tools and technologies.
We're live. You're on in 3.
Defense, government, and industry leaders come together for successful and proven engaging events. You'll gain valuable insight, get the chance to ask questions, all from the comfort of your own home or office. Sign up for our events newsletters and receive alerts for upcoming live streams.
Welcome back. Let's get into this week's defense headlines. The U.S. Navy awarded Lockheed Martin $23 million to begin creating the integrated combat system that may one day connect the Navy's and U.S. Coast Guard's surface fleets. The award could be up to $1.1 billion if all options are exercised through fiscal year 2030. A Defense Department announcement says that Lockheed's winning bid was one of 2 submitted. It did not name the second company. The Navy envisions a common combat system connecting ships in the future. Today, destroyers, cruisers, and littoral combat ships use variations of Lockheed's Aegis combat system, something frigates and unmanned surface vessels will also use. Amphibious ships and aircraft carriers use a separate ship self-defense system that was developed by Raytheon and is now managed by Lockheed. Leaders have said that if the Navy could achieve a common combat system for all its surface combatants, it could field and integrate new capabilities across the entire fleet faster and manage the combat system for less cost. The British government has committed nearly $5 billion to the next phase in development of nuclear-powered submarines as part of the tri-national AUKUS program with Australia and the United States. BAE Systems, Babcock Marine, and Rolls-Royce received contracts in the award, with work aimed at developing a nuclear attack submarine for Britain and Australia. UK Defence Secretary Grant Shapps told attendees at a Conservative Party conference that the investment covers the design, prototyping, and purchase of key long lead items for the first UK submarines. The boats are set for delivery in the late 2030s. The Pentagon is warning Congress that it is running low on money to replace weapons the US has already sent to Ukraine and has already been forced to slow down resupplying some troops, according to a letter sent to congressional leaders. The letter, obtained by the Associated Press, urges Congress to replenish funding for Ukraine. Congress averted a government shutdown by passing a short-term funding bill over the weekend, but the measure dropped all assistance for Ukraine in the battle against Russia. Pentagon Comptroller Michael McCord told House and Senate leaders there is $1.6 billion left of the nearly $26 billion Congress provided to replenish U.S. military stocks that have been flowing to Ukraine. The weapons include millions of rounds of artillery, rockets, and missiles critical to Ukraine's counteroffensive aimed at taking back territory gained by Russia in the war. JSTARS has flown into the sunset. The stalwart E-8C Joint Surveillance Target Attack Radar System plane flew its last operational mission on September 21st, capping a 3-decade career as a military eye in the sky in conflicts from Operation Desert Storm to the war in Ukraine. JSTARS is a modified Boeing 707 that uses a long sensor on the belly of the jet to track the movement of ground forces around a region and share that information with other aircraft and troops below. Combat units rely on the fleet to highlight potential targets and stop friendly forces from veering into harm's way. Its final mission departed from Ramstein Air Base in Germany, a hub for U.S. military operations across Europe and points farther south. The Air Force declined to answer where the sortie took place or what it entailed. So what's next? Well, they're headed to the Boneyard at Davis-Monthan in Tucson next month. 9 E-11A airborne communications relay planes will be based at the Central Georgia installation, as well as a command and control squadron, a group focused on electromagnetic spectrum warfare, and an office to handle the Air Force's acquisition of future communications technologies known as the Advanced Battle Management System. And it will be a busy time in the defense industry. Instead of maintaining a vast inventory of jets that are purpose-built for highly specialized missions, the Air Force now wants to use a network of satellites, aircraft sensors, and ground radars to collect the same targeting and tracking data. Starting in November, Naval Special Warfare Command will begin testing its special warfare sailors for the unauthorized use of steroids and other performance-enhancing drugs. The Navy said the program aims to ensure that sailors are functioning at natural peak performance. It comes months after a report following a SEAL candidate's death recommended the service bolster testing for the drugs. The measure will require 15% of a unit's population to randomly undergo testing for the drugs each month. The policy change comes after the command got approval from the Department of Defense and the Navy for expanded authority to perform random urinalysis testing for PEDs in February. Previous investigations into possible steroid use by SEAL candidates led to discipline and requests for more drug testing, but they had always been denied. Substances that are considered performance-enhancing include steroids, human growth hormones, and selective androgen receptor modulators, as well as DoD-prohibited dietary supplements. The command legal representative will be notified, and personnel will face mandatory processing for administrative separation and potential disciplinary action if a sailor tests positive for these drugs. The Navy will also pull SEAL candidates from training immediately. According to Naval Special Warfare Command, only 3 out of 434 Navy SEAL and Special Warfare Combat Crewman candidates have tested positive for performance-enhancing drugs since March. Still, the command maintains that number is too high and that any number above 0 is unacceptable. The initiative comes after the 2022 death of Seaman Kyle Mullen, a Navy SEAL candidate. An investigation from Naval Education and Training Command found Mullen died from acute pneumonia hours after he and his basic underwater demolition SEAL class wrapped up Hell Week. An enlarged heart contributed to his death, and the report found that there was no evidence of performance-enhancing drugs. However, the report noted that he was not tested for steroids and that several vials of drugs and syringes were discovered in his car. The investigation also detailed other problems with the Navy SEAL training program, claiming that medical care and oversight is, quote, poorly organized, poorly integrated, and poorly led, and put candidates at significant risk. It determined Mullen's death could have been prevented if these medical issues were resolved. When we return, our personal finance expert gives you her latest tips on planning for year-end expenses. Stay tuned. Welcome back. On this edition of Money Minute, Navy Federal Credit Union personal finance expert Jeanette Mack is back with her latest advice on how to start planning for end-of-year expenses.
Fall is here, and if you're like most Americans, this time of year brings not only cooler weather, but also extra expenses as we head back to school and into the holidays. Believe it or not, now is the best time of year to start planning for the end-of-year expenses to come. As a nation, we spend more during the last 3 months of the year than any other time. So take the time now to make a list of the things you know you'll be spending on through the end of the year. Think holidays, birthdays, quarterly bills, and so on. Write them all out in order of when they'll occur and estimate how much you'll need for each. As a matter of fact, overestimate, so you'll have wiggle room for the things that may pop up unexpectedly. Your total is your savings goal. Then look for where you can cut costs to help you get there. If you can add income with a side gig, do that. Adding more money to your budget is always a plus. And who knows, while you're setting yourself up to afford your holiday spending, you might also be setting yourself up for a better financial future.
Thanks, Jeanette. We'll see you next week. To get more coverage of military and defense topics, look through your scope at militarytimes.com, as well as defensenews.com. And to be the sharpest trooper at the tip of the spear, sign up for our Early Bird Brief newsletter, compiled each morning to bring you the latest headlines. It's also in audio. Check out the podcast version, out each weekday wherever you get your podcasts. And if social media is where you get your open source intelligence, follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. And stick around, there's more Defense News Weekly after the break. Welcome back to Defense News Weekly. Imagine what it takes to get your favorite products to your door. From designing, engineering, purchasing of source materials, as well as getting everything to the shop floor where the magic happens. Well, that's all been turned upside down recently with supply chain issues and chip shortages that have sent a ripple effect throughout all of the manufacturing industry. In the thick of it is defense manufacturing. That topic was part of a recent webcast at Defense News, where experts discussed the future of defense manufacturing. In it, Defense News editor Marjorie Sensor spoke to Matt Medley, who serves as the Global Industry Director at IFS.
First up, let's talk about recent disruptions like supply chain weaknesses and chip shortages. How have those impacted the defense manufacturing industry's ability to deliver products?
Yeah, it's been a pretty big deal. So we know that it's been a big problem across the world for a few years, and the manufacturers and the contractors that have the most widely distributed operations are the ones that are being particularly affected by supply chain problems and have been hit the hardest. In many of these cases, these companies made decisions long ago based on business cases that are kind of outdated now to move some production maybe offshore or lower cost labor somewhere else or things like that. But those business cases that they did to make those decisions have been kind of flipped on their heads because some of the assumptions are no longer true. And those assumptions include a stable and robust supply chain. So when you have problems like that, you have to go back and see if that still makes sense to do that. On top of that, COVID seems to be winding down, but still has caused major supply chain issues that we're working through. Global conflicts like the Russia-Ukraine war and tensions between China and Taiwan have made physical shipping through parts of the world very, very difficult right now. And of course, there's still a shortage of skilled labor. And the remaining workforce is demanding hefty raises and concessions. So it's really tough to be a manufacturer right now. And all of that unaccounted for risk has kind of opened the eyes of business leaders to the cost of not mitigating that risk. But when you account for it in today's reality, a lot of times the business cases are saying, rebuild your supply chain in a resilient way and bring things closer to home.
And so what strategies have you seen put in place to cope with the problems you outlined?
Sure. Yeah, I just mentioned one, bringing things closer to home. You may hear it called onshoring or nearshoring or even friendshoring. Not necessarily things back to the U.S. or from the originating country, although a lot of countries like to do that. But like I said, just revisiting those business cases. You might have to pay slightly higher labor costs, but you're also greatly lowering transportation costs. And in the context of risk, you're lowering your risk as well. So it really makes a lot of sense to at least look at that again and see if you can do that. So that's got the organizational level. At the plant level, unfortunately, we're having to see, at least temporarily, plants carrying more inventory and buffer stock to help weather these small and intermediate delays. That kind of goes against the lean principle of just-in-time delivery and things like that. But lean doesn't mean no inventory, it means minimal inventory, and you have to account for risk with that. Fortunately, there are technology solutions out there that can help you determine the optimum levels, and we'll get into some of that, I'm sure.
We host regular webcasts with some of the biggest minds in defense on the most timely issues. We also take audience questions, so check out defensenews.com/events for more. And unfortunately, that's all we have time for in this episode. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.